And hello, welcome everybody to another episode of Hairy Man Hoaxes and Hoodwinks. I'm glad you all could be here, and woo, that chat is already filled with my friends. Thank you for being here. I see y'all, okay? I'm not going to go through everybody's names tonight because I really want to get to the show. I do. I've got a lot of guests in the background, and I don't want to waste any time.
Planetary powers, activate!
Woo! We got Mr. Brent in the house.
Howdy.
How are you doing?
Doing good. So looking forward to the show tonight. Got a full house. Good topic. Should be fun.
Yeah, for sure. And Mr. Nobody.
Whoa!
That on purpose. Mr. Thomas Steenburg, welcome to the panel.
Hi, Nikki. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing good.
Hey, Brent. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too, man. Good to see you.
Weather holding out for you guys over there?
Well, it's been beautiful weather. I spent a number of hours last night on back roads. The only thing I saw was a squirrel.
Was it a Bigfoot imitating a squirrel, though? That's what we got to find out.
No,
Questions. We got questions.
Anything.
No.
Did you get that squirrel print? You always
We got to cast that one. Get the track line.
get it. Gotta do it. I'd also like to bring on Mr. Leon Thompson from our heart.
Great openings, by the way. Those are
We really have to do more of those. I enjoy playing
I
them.
could track squirrels, by the way. Did I mention that? I could track them. I could tell them whether male or females. And whether they're pregnant.
Oh, thank you. And of course, I also have Mr. Bill Reid. Welcome.
Yeah.
Healthy skeptic.
Yes.
A happy skeptic.
Afternoon, everyone. Nikki, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good, thank you.
That's good.
This is Canada's finest right here, everybody. So
Yes,
we are
it
in for a
is.
treat
Yes, it
tonight.
is.
God
It
save our Tate.
Are you supposed to salute? How do you do yours?
God, we're in trouble.
I don't know.
Over my heart or something.
So for those of you who are not aware and didn't get the notice, I did have to change around my shows tonight. Was going to have Alberta Sasquatch on, Keenan Giger, and but we've got to move that around because he got stuck out in the bush. Yeah, he's out there still. He's looking for.
Well, he's got a good excuses in the bush, though. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
We're talking about Wild Rose Province.
So we'll give him the out. And I still had my lovely gentleman who said, we will be here. We will be there for you. So so tonight's show is going to be, what would you do? What would you do if you ran into a Sasquatch? Not just that. What if you ran into a UFO or an alien or a gunman or whatever it is. Everybody reacts and to things differently. So that's what we're going to do. That's what today's show is about. What would you do? And we're going to hit this topic rolling with what happens after you see a Bigfoot. What's next? You know, all kinds of questions come up. And I mean, I could have gone on and on and on about questions about who do you tell? How do you tell your encounter? Are you a researcher or a person just out hiking? Is there different standards for different types of people who are telling their encounters? And some of these questions can definitely be answered by Thomas because he actually interviews people. And so these first few questions, I'd like to direct to Thomas first on how he approaches people who have had encounters. Do they come directly to you, or have you searched them out, or both?
Well, in my case, usually you're talking about witnesses who want to report what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they contact me and they basically tell me what's going on, and I try to make arrangements if I can, to either meet them in person and or over the phone if that's not possible. And I've always had a standard set of questionnaire I've used since the beginning, because I treat alleged Sasquatch encounters kind of similar to a way a cop treats a crime scene. And when I interview the witness, I let them tell their own story in their own time, in their own way, and I don't try to lead them at all or ask leading questions. At least I hope I don't.
Right.
Because I feel you're going to get a more honest description of what they believe they have seen if they tell it in their own way, in their own words, and in their own time. And if something doesn't fit, well, then it doesn't fit. Who knows? Maybe you're talking to someone who's trying to hoax you, or a case of mistaken identity. Because you always got to remember, and you've heard me say this before, Nikki, when you're interviewing the witnesses, there's only three possibilities here. Only three. One, they saw a Sasquatch. Two, they mistook someone or something for a Sasquatch. Or three, they're lying. And the unfortunate reality in this day and age with the internet and the Sasquatch field being what it is, number three is probably the most common.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So you let them tell it your own way, you don't try to lead them at all. If there's evidence at the location, well, then that has to be looked into as quickly as possible, i.e. footprints.
Right.
Right. Now, if you're asking me if I went driving out like I did last night and I saw a Sasquatch and I didn't get a picture of it or something like that, I'd probably be very reluctant to tell about it to anybody, because I've spent 45 years giving everyone else hell for not having a camera ready.
Right.
So I probably tell a few select people, and if I did get evidence at the location, I would again tell a few select people. But I wouldn't announce it publicly until the investigation in that particular incident was done.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
Right.
So you don't get a lot of people out there tromping around and things like that, and maybe messing up the scene beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or afterwards. I mean, yeah.
And a lot of the times, though, you're dealing with people who they're not researchers. Okay, they weren't out there with cameras. They weren't out there, ready for. Oh, there's Mr. Bigfoot. Be ready for that type of thing, and so I'm sure during your investigations, you would find, oh, well, now their picture's all blurry. They've got a picture showing you circled and redded.
A major reason why most of these so-called Sasquatch photographs are blurry is two. One, they intended it to be that way because they don't really want you to look at what it really was. Or two, they make the mistake that most people do. They have their camera set for automatic. They're looking at something running through the woods 60, 80 yards away. And of course, the camera automatically focuses in on the closest trees.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why it usually ends up being blurry.
Right.
And that's a mistake. But that's human nature. That's human reaction. Because if you're going to have an encounter with this, the odds are it's going to be a few seconds at best. You have that normal human reaction of, and then if you're even lucky enough to activate your camera and turn it on time and get a few pictures, you usually make the same mistake of not having it in focus or on manual focus, so you can adjust to what it is you're actually looking at. And next thing you know, the thing in the back over there is a blurry blob, but the tree real close to the camera is in perfect focus.
Right.
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 And that has happened time and time and time again.
There's nothing really you can do about that, though.
No, there's nothing. It's human nature.
Right.
It's human nature. And it really, really annoys me that in all the years since the PG film of October 20, 1967, something of that quality really has not happened again.
Yep.
Do you have any reason why that has happened? I mean, you say you're
two possible reasons. So what I've just described, bad luck and people being human beings and reacting badly, or there's nothing there to photograph.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was I wanted to get at, is that maybe there's just nothing there.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so you have that, and we have standards for researchers when they go out. If they're going to present evidence and they're going to say, this is what I found, this is it, and we expect them to be able to prove that evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the times they're not researchers, and they're out there and just have an experience. So do you hold the same standards for those type of interviews when you do interviews?
I have the same standard to all of my interviews.
Mm-hmm.
I interview them all the same way and the same method. If I'm convinced at the end of the interview that the guy's just blown it out both ends, all I'll say is thank you very much, very politely,
Mm-hmm.
and he or she will never hear from me again.
Right.
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 If I do think there's something to it, I'll make a file report on it, type the whole damn thing up. And that usually takes a bit of a test. It's almost like writing a small book every time now. Right. I can type a little better than that, Bill. But yeah, and eventually people will find out, everyone will find out about it. But I always, no matter what the circumstances, if the witness wants to remain confidential, I will not reveal their identity to anybody.
Right.
If that is what they wish. And quite
because
often
it's their encounter, right? It's not it doesn't belong to anybody else but them.
Mm-hmm.
And they have those rights to that encounter as far as
I mean, we weren't in their heads. We weren't looking through their eyes. They're either telling about something they actually saw, something they mistook, or they're lying.
Right.
One of the three.
So, Leon, when somebody has an encounter that's traumatizing, that takes them by surprise, and they need to regurgitate this to somebody, this should be done in their own time, right? It should be done full not by anybody else's expectations.
Yeah, I did. The way you kind of worded that, I would word it a little differently. I think in most cases, if someone's had an experience with something, you have them because they want to come and talk to you about the experience. If they've had some type of experience with something that's unknown, right? Because they would be coming, and so that gives you an open door with them to probably get a bit more information out of somebody, compared to somebody who is try to pull something off on you, I guess you could put it that way. For me, when I'm witnessing or listening to people, is one thing I'm doing is I'm also checking their body language out. So you're checking for stuff up here. So if a person's breathing up here, in most cases, they're lying to you. If they're doing short breaths down their belly, they're usually telling you the truth. So witnesses I've talked to, that the other thing too is if you're like Tom, I do the same thing Thomas does. Doing witnesses is kind of like dating. It's not what they're telling you on the first, second, third date. It's what they're not telling you. And it's kind of like it's not that they don't want to tell you. It's just that they're unsure of what to say to you. So if I saw a Sasquatch, the same way Thomas says it, and I like the way Thomas has given me some good words to use or sentences to use for kind of tough questions or tough responses you would have to somebody. So for instance, that somebody shows you a picture and the picture's all blurry, they really believe you saw a Sasquatch, but the way Thomas words something like that is, look, even if you did see a Sasquatch, it's not going to be good enough evidence if you show a blurry picture, even if you did see a Sasquatch. And so, one of the things I would hope for myself is they've got to have a pattern. And if they have to have a pattern, and I'm listening to a witness, I want to find out, first of all, if they're in the area and if they're transient through the area. So if the witness is telling me a story where it's gone across the road, you could say they were driving on the highway and it's going across the road. The first thing to do is to investigate the area to see whether or not the footprints are there, but see if they're transient or not. How will I know if they're transient? I don't know, other than activity, being able to read the ground. But in most cases, it doesn't seem like they are, or in most cases, it doesn't seem like they are habituated to one site. Some people are claiming, of course, they have habituation sites and stuff like that. Well, if they're as habituated in these sites as these people claim, I think to me, they'd be so much easier to trick. Now people can go on and say, well, they were just too clever for us, and that. And I don't buy any of that. I'm sorry, we're human beings. We're at the top of the food chain. We're pretty sophisticated at what we do. They may be animals and wild, and we just don't understand their patterns, and so we can't find them. But like every other animal, once you discover their pattern and we can figure out what the pattern is, it's very producible to do it over and over again. So when you're dealing with a witness, you're also trying to find out whether or not the witnesses, like when I'm reading body language, it's not about someone telling you the truth and lying. It's whether or not they own the story they're trying to say to you. And especially when it comes across something that is unknown and they go into a PTSD state. Now, the PTSD state will come across to you as they did indeed see a Sasquatch because it's so emotionally traumatic. Your next level you got to figure out is the PTSD they're experiencing transference, meaning that it's from a past, the emotions they're experiencing about the event that happened. And you'll hear me always ask this question: have you ever felt this experience before at this level? And they might say to you, I remember one time I was a kid, because your brain always goes back to a reference point whenever it goes back to memory. So if you have a PTSD experience of a Sasquatch, and it's just because of a Sasquatch, not because you've been in the military and you got PTSD from that, or you got a violent family background you come out of, or you've had PTSD experiences in the past, it's going to read differently on the person that has an actual event with the Sasquatch. So you got to figure out the two, whether or not the experience they're having, if they're not projecting onto believing it's a Sasquatch. Plus, you're also looking for key phrases. I remember I talked to a guy once who I think Thomas has one of these style of questions on his questions he asked, which is, have you ever believed in a Sasquatch before the event? Or have you ever been exposed to any online stuff? So you listen to auditorial cues when a person's telling their story to see whether or not they've been influenced by YouTube. And one of the guys I had who was a grizzly guide or bear guide too, he kept talking about marbles, and I kind of thought, for somebody who's never had any experience about Sasquatch, why are you putting marbles with the narration of marbles associated with Sasquatch? Well, he's obviously been talking to Mike from Flower from Ontario.
Sasquatch, Ontario,
Yeah,
Sasquatch,
right.
Ontario.
So here you have a guy who says he's never, he on one side he's saying one thing, and yet his vocabulary that he's saying is talking about being influenced by Sasquatch. So brain's pretty weird. If you come across something that you don't understand, your brain goes through all its memory banks, and that's the back part of your brain, and it comes up to the front saying, I think it's the Sasquatch. The Slocan encounter, they were talking about Sasquatches as a result of that encounter, what they thought was the Sasquatch. Maybe it was the Sasquatch. The places the people lived in that supposedly saw Sasquatch, there was a guy there that used to do Sasquatch research out of the place they bought. So there's a lot of subconscious narration they're picking up without realizing that they're doing that. So the idea for me, or at least Bigfoot Okanagan, is to get your name out there so you can get on site as quick as possible to validate whether or not there is something in the area. And it's like in Thomas's area, when he showed me around up there, they seem to come by in, they stick around for a week or 2 weeks, you could say. And then all of a sudden there's nothing, you don't hear any more reports, and they come through again a couple of years down the road, a week or so. I mean, I'd love to come across something like that, where there's multiple sightings and stuff. Like Keenan is planning on coming up here. That's why I was hoping he was going to be on the show tonight, because he wants to go up to Cherryville. And Cherryville, I have to warn him about Cherryville, because Cherryville is, people will be happier just to shoot you when they find you on the property. It's kind of very, no offense to my Southern American friends, but we're talking deliverance type of mentality. You drive up to your house and you have some horses and goats and cows, and it's their front yard, and you're thinking, is this the person's front yard, or is there something else going on there? There's a lot of shady kind of people in the area. And so, but in the same sense as one of the people from Alberta Sasquatch, her family has a gold claim out in Cherryville area by my place. And so, but the weird thing is I've also got another guy who has a gold claim, same area, very close to each other. And I asked, neither one knows of the other one. Both of them are claiming that they have Sasquatches on their property. So I do hope to get out there and investigate that, but I also hope that Keenan can also come out there and take a look at it too, because it's good to have a few more options on it. But you're looking at a lot of people who've been influenced. Unfortunately, the more it gets to be accepted in society, a lot of people they're hearing stuff about, tree snaps and stuff, just generally, because they know so-and-so who knows so-and-so who knows so-and-so, and they talk about tree snaps being Sasquatch, or this sound is that of a Sasquatch. One of the key parts I think that's important for us to do. Sorry, my brain was thinking Keenan's going to be here, so I'm kind of going to say this. Was a lot of stuff like Thomas did and Jerry did with regards to the coyote sounds up in the Chehalis, right, Thomas? That's the way. Yeah. We need to go through all the evidence again and then find the evidence of it, so we know that it's true what we're following and what we're not following, instead of this other crap. And so this last couple of times I've been online on shows, I keep putting out this $100 challenge. First of all, I'll give anybody $100 American if they can film a coyote make that sound, because we know coyotes make the sound that the same as the Chehalis sounds. So we can put it, and then people can say, well, like Steve from Here's Cryptid, it's not my job as an educator to tell you the answers. It's my job to point you to where the answers are. So the Chehalis sounds, I think you guys found out, or at least one of you guys did, Bill might be able to help you too with this, is you found out a soundtrack or something from the Calgary Zoo on the Chehalis sounds. Is that correct, you guys? Or
what happened was Jerry Masters and myself went out to the flats and we saw the coyote emitting the sound.
Right. But
the original recordings we took to a fellow who's a zoologist at the Vancouver Zoo down here, and he was amazed that these sounds came from a coyote. He hadn't heard those particular sounds coming from a coyote before.
Right. And I think that's the key part, is to go through all that data, including like the whoop sound people have been hearing a lot of times, is the whoop, 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 whoop. Well, I'm pretty sure I've heard the whoop sound, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple of other people I know who've heard the whoop sound, and it's not from a Sasquatch, it's from a waterfowl bird. And it's going to cost me about $500 to $1,000 to find out which bird it is by the time I put the soundtrack through the programming. But, the key part is to go through all of that, have that archive. So when people come across it, we realize, don't waste your time. That's not what that is. That's not what that isn't what's going on. It's the same idea of the samurai chatter. Okay, so the samurai chatter is coming out. I want to take the information from the samurai chatter and give it to a new modern guy. Remember that's from the 70s. Remember, so we're talking like 70s. We're talking 50 years ago. That soundtrack we came from Sasquatch, and give that audio sound to somebody who's modern and hip today, who can go through that and find out what the hell that actually is. Is it a language or isn't it a language? And we have the original sound. So all that stuff gets kind of put aside up to that point. And this goes back to what you were asking earlier, I think, Nikki, which is, why is everything blurry? Why is everything going on the way it's going on? I think, we have a bit of a catfish scenario going on here, that TV show.
Yeah.
Which the big, somebody asked me the other day is, why do people lie? Well, people lie all the time. Catfish is a great show to watch. Why are these people lying? Well, because once you're caught in a lie, you have to keep lying.
Yeah. Then at some point, they start mixing up their lies. They forget the lie that they used to cover the other lie.
Right. And so when you're talking to witnesses, the idea is everything's always consistent whenever I'm talking to a witness. Mm-hmm. And again, looking at their body language and that, there's always, and you'll always hear me say, like, I word it in such a way that I know how people's brains think. So they're always saying, well, Leon says that he believes me, or in regards to body language. I never say that, because body language isn't about telling the truth or not. It's about whether or not you own your story you're saying. So you could be perfectly online with your body language saying that you believe what you're saying, but I can't stay, because I'm not standing beside you, that what you're actually perceiving is actually what happened. So these people that came across, or last week or so, looking at another report that's come in, I'm not there. And like Thomas says, you take it for salt value for what they're saying to you, but you always have a bit of, after you talk to so many people. I mean, I do it professionally, but Thomas he's definitely done hundreds of more interviews than I had in regards to Sasquatch. But you can usually tell there's a tone shift too that happens, instead of a magical thinking style of tone that they say. And it's, especially a lot of people with the woo, they'll have that magical style of thinking, communication, auditorial sound in their tone when they're telling you the stories of Sasquatch,
Right.
And sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish your thought.
I was just going to say a mention on something what Leon pointed out about the sounds, and there's so much other for lack of a better term, Sasquatch community that gets accepted as gold when there's no reason for it whatsoever. I'm lucky enough to be old enough and in this long enough. I remember when a lot of this stuff's talked, like people are, they're finding stick formations and nests and shelters. And I remember when the whole Twisted Tree theory thing started. I mean, the late Robert Titmus first proposed that in the early 1960s. Mm-hmm. It was never established fact. He was just wondering. It was a hypothesis. But through time and retelling, and before you know it, by the time the 1990s rolled around, every documentary on the Sasquatch is saying twisted trees are markers up by Sasquatch. Now, people, every time they find something, a moose kicked over or something like that, they're assuming Sasquatch did it.
Yeah. And the weird thing too is you'll find that in an area where there's a lot of trees that are snapped the same direction, you'll find that a lot of that is moose activity.
Yeah.
And it's high up. It's not like 6 feet up, 7 feet to 8 feet up, because like and it's snapping all the time. And the problem that I noticed too is, which I've mentioned over and over again, is you have to educate yourself about the forest, because we don't know how to read the forest that much. There's not many people who are actually in the forest a lot. Maybe camping, but you're around your campsite, you're around your friends, you're on your dinghy or on your boat fishing. You're not in the bush. You don't recognize things in the bush. A lot of trees that are bent over like U shapes like this, when they're 6 inches in the ground, and people are going, well, that's Sasquatch. Why is this 6 inches in the ground? Well, you'll be surprised how long a tree, especially a dead tree, can. I can show you a tree up in my area that's 35 feet long, goes straight this way, straight away from you, 35 feet around, and it weaves in and out of the trees.
Right. And that's a point that even Central Florida Bigfoot Matt would often say, that you need to know your area, your forest, forest language. What does he call it, guys?
Yeah, forest language.
Yeah, the forest language. You have to know what, do you have ice that's going to bend those trees all in the same direction through ice storms or snow load, or,
microburst.
It's always, microbursts. It's always changing. Things, the Mother Nature is an incredible force and can do things from one year to the other.
And on top of that, people doing weird things in the bush.
That too. Yeah. For years, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts went out there and had to show how to make a shelter, and they just left them there, and over years,
a lot of trapline guys too. A lot of weird trapline stuff is out there too. Like I was out with a BFRO researcher a year ago or so, and they kept coming show me all these really strange tree formations or strange tree things, and what they were trapline. They were done by trappers, and it's so that the animal they're trapping has a runway. And so they run down, like, especially like on a bent tree or a circular tree, but there's a trap set at the end of the tree, but it has to follow the tree all the way down to get off the tree. It doesn't go backwards, it's moving forward. So, and again, people just aren't used to recognizing things. People are totally unfamiliar. And I mean, there's lots of good evidence we can just point to that we have already, which is if you looked at the Sierra Sounds and we looked at the camp they have with the door on the camp, that Ron Moorhead talks about, they have up there, that shed that the government had back when David Pilates did his documentary. It was, remember that was done in the 70s. So not documentary, but the fort or whatever, the shelter that they had was done in the 70s. They had the front door on there. The government came in during Pilates documentary, said, you guys got to take this thing down. So they did. So that's 50 years later. The front door is the same size almost as it was when it was put on in the original film. If you watch the original film of the 70s, it's the same size. And people are so amazed when they look up and they see these big trees that are still suspended in the air. Well, frick, if a door is made of wood and it's in the mountains and it's still there after 50 years, and it's, remember, on the floor, the forest floor, wood does not last very long. You've got bugs, beetles, porcupines, deer, all sorts of other animals on top of moss, rot, everything else, insects that will usually devour that door. Finding the large logs above your head and stuff like that, it's got nothing to do with, Bigfoot gymnasium or whatever like that. This is big
avalanche damage right there.
Colorado Bigfoot stuff, it's a gymnastics thing. It's like, okay, if you're eating chips there, we can definitely attack there. But that's what drives I think most people crazy. I'm, like I said repeatedly over Thomas. I mean, I'm almost at the point now where I want to start drinking if he's not going to start drinking, because it's just too crazy out here. Like, let's just validate the evidence, what we do know, and have it categorized, like Matt was saying, which I agree with him, which is, we have some armchair couch potato people that are Sasquatch people, get them to look up sounds.
Yeah.
Make $100, easy $100 American. Find out where the whoop is. I'm tracking it down right now, but
that's where we're going is that, okay, you get these photos and you get these videos, and then what happens to them? Certain people may follow through and do what you're saying, look for those sounds and search for where they came from. But it's actually a very small population that do that, because it seems to me that many of the people in the community are just want the info, but they don't want to do the work, or that they're ready and willing to accept information, but it's harder to get anybody to actually sit down and go through 8 hours of audio sounds and try to compare that to something else. And so that's why when it comes to photos and videos, what do you do with them? It's very hard to find people who will take your stuff and analyze it, because they've got their own stuff they're doing. They have their own 8 hours worth of audio to do, not just to do yours. And who has the money to do that right now? Nobody. There's very few people in the community who can just afford, here's $500, go through my weekend worth of audio to see if something's there. And if there is, find out what it is. Is it a coyote, or is it a Bigfoot, or is it a bird? And so, Bill, if I was to ask you, as a researcher, investigator, and somebody shared some evidence with you, and you think it's good evidence, what do you do with it? What do you do with it?
Well, again, as Thomas said, the story to tell is theirs. So they're the ultimate owner of that information. So if they say to me, here's the evidence I have, I want you to research it and come back and tell me what you really think about it, then I would go, depending on the type of evidence. We know various experts in different types of fields that we could give it to. I mean, if it was, video recording, I do know a couple of people that know far more about video than I do, that could do work with it. If it was, again, if they were willing to talk to Thomas or Leon to get their input on it, I would, share it that way. But at the end of the day, the stories are theirs to tell. And unless they say, here's the information, do what you want with it, everything would go through what they want, what done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they've taken video evidence and they say, well, this is my evidence, I'm showing it to you, but this is my film, I don't want to see it on Channel 6 News or whatever.
Right. And that's good. I mean, that's kind of the point I'm getting, is that they own that encounter, and if they want to share it to the world, then they can share it to the world. But if they don't, and they're just asking for your opinion's not really the word I'm looking for. I'm looking for validation. They want your validation as to, listen, this happened to me. Take it for what it's worth.
I don't know if there's validation.
And the flip side of that is,
right, would be guidance, more than likely, I would think.
Yeah, that's a good word too.
Because validation is more of when you check in with you, do you buy the con I'm giving you too? So
yeah.
Sorry.
And the flip side of it is as well, if they're asking for guidance or input or help with it, I again, if I spent a lot of time doing something with them and getting, the Leon to the world involved and the Thomas involved, and, we all get excited about, this is really good evidence, blah, 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 and we spend a bunch of time on it, and then they turn around and said, okay, well, that's good. I'm packing it away and sticking it in my garage and nobody's going to hear from it. I mean, frankly, I'd be pissed, so there is give and take. Nobody owes anybody anything when it comes to this world. However, if you are asking for help or you are asking for guidance, there has to be that give and take.
Or presenting it to the public.
Yeah, and even with that, like with presenting to the public, let's just say, let's say if I saw a Sasquatch tomorrow, I'm out there tromping about, one runs past me, I take a photo of it or a video. First thing I'm going to do is, after I review it, is how does the video look? Now, if I first look at it and it looks like crap, I might ask a couple of people that I know to see if they can fix the resolution, maybe bring something out of it. But I would hope to use the same sniff test on my own evidence as I would use on anybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
Then if it got past my thinking, saying, yeah, this looks like it might be good, then it would go to, the Thomases and the Leons. But I would ask them to be probably more critical of my stuff than they would on the average person they see. Because if I was going to put something out to the public that I thought was good evidence, I would want the harshest critics in the world to look at it first and say, this is great evidence, or passable evidence. Because the last thing I want is to think I have good evidence and put it out there just to have it knocked down on something that I should have figured out beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Not meaning we're perfect. We all make mistakes. If I sent something out there that I thought was great and Thomas thought was great, and then somebody came up and said, well, that's the northern red-tailed woodpecker that's only in town for 2 weeks out of a decade. Well,
Yeah,
that happens.
Yeah.
But you as a researcher or that, you'd want to be your own harshest critic, and I'd expect my group, if I had to share that information with them, to be the harshest critic first before we sent it out.
right.
Well, I think there's a bit of advantage too that if you with the book club boys, anyways, is that we're all interested to find out what is it we're looking for. We don't have a problem with being wrong, and to have other people that are skeptics, those that we trust as healthy skeptics, they're not out to hurt us. They're out to to give us clarity of view, and I think the idea of showing Thomas or you, Bill, or Gary, is to get clarity. Like if I don't see something that's solid, I'm not going to phone anybody. But if I find some tracks and then I find out that they're in the area, I'm going to be making some phone calls to certain people, which you guys know who those are, and say, get your asses over here. But along with a few other things, like a few technology things, but I'm still waiting for any kind of validity to any of the evidence supposedly that I've been hearing for the last 7 years out here. I think most of it is just hearsay, and people are. It's like dealing with a new style of Christendom. 30 over 30,000 different denominations. We've got 33 now, the Bigfoot one, if you want to include the Nephilim Bigfoot, which is always hilarious because they're always talking about, the Nephilim. You better go back to your Book of Enoch and find out exactly the size of how big a Nephilim is, because it's certainly bigger than a Sasquatch, that's for sure. But anyways, this is just crazy, Bill. So I mean, that's why. Go ahead.
My thought is then you get evidence. Okay, you have what you feel is good enough evidence. How do you disseminate that to other groups, to the rest of the community? And that's something that Brent has brought up many times, is we need to be better about how we share evidence and information about what we're researching.
Well, you need to talk to someone who can really do something about it, i.e., Dr. Jeff Meldrum or the anthropology department at the University of British Columbia or something like that. That's what needs to happen. But you have to keep in mind what's the word? The mystique that goes along with this subject. Personally, if I ever went to a sighting location, got a good hair sample to look at, and wanted to turn it in to get examined, the last thing I would mention anywhere is Sasquatch.
Exactly.
I would just say, we got hairs here. Can you tell us what they are? I wouldn't say the word.
Well, that's what I don't get about the prints is, we have all these viable prints that all these people have signed off on as a real Bigfoot. So why can't we take these prints to other anthropologists across the country, say, hey, was this made from a living foot, or was it made from a fake foot? Or, or what that whole thing. Don't even have to bring Bigfoot into it. Just, is this a real foot or not? I think if we had more tangible, people backing evidence that we probably already have, it'd probably go a lot further. That's why it's like, man, makes you wonder if we really just all of us restarted our investigation, really find out what we truly have, and really kind of sort through it. And because I don't think it's really being presented in a way that, is really beneficial to the subject and all. I think a lot of information can get lost in translation or whatever. It's, I don't know. I think we have good evidence out there. It's just we need to better understand it and get it verified.
You need to use a healthy dose of common sense. I mean,
I Thomas, I think when it comes to tracks, the door is closed on that. I mean, in this day and age, you're not going to be able to take a 16, 18-inch track to any anthropologist without them immediately knowing that you're talking about Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Yep.
Yeah, I think in the early days, there was debate. There was that FBI tracker, I forget his name, that I know in a couple of the tracks that Meldrum has said is real. He'd come out and said, in his opinion, they're not real. So, it's one of those things that, first off, nobody has ever seen, or no one has ever has good evidence that they presented showing what's made those tracks.
Except for the patty film.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to evidence, the only thing that'll ever prove the Sasquatch existence is the body or a piece of a body or submissive skeletal remains. That's the only thing that'll ever damn well do it. Photographs or tracks or casting of tracks will never do it.
Well, I think again, we and I differ on this. If you had some good HD, high definition film with some DNA evidence that had gone, that you could show that it was they were together, you'd have a good case for it. But the problem when it comes just to tracks is that and even the PGF film, if you think it's real, great. But if you don't think it's real, again, there's never been a good piece of evidence that showed what made it. So when you're saying, when you have a Dr. Meldrum saying that this means a foot made it, that's just his opinion. There's nothing rock solid he's basing it on other than his opinion.
Hell, if I laid out a corpse of a Sasquatch on the table, the anthropologists that actually looked at it would probably say, well, I think we got something here. But there'll be a whole series in academia that would say, oh, come on.
I don't know.
I want to see this, and until they do, I mean, there's nothing that's going to prove the existence of Sasquatch overnight. It's going to be a slow, drawn-out process. And like what you said, Bill, a long time ago, and I agree with you, if the Sasquatch is proven to exist or proven not to exist, it's going to be by some scientific group that was doing studies out in the woods for other reasons that had nothing to do with the Sasquatch in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's a lot of studies going out that our biologists are doing on known animals or just in areas and all that, there's tons of game cams out there. And that's where you would almost expect something to be produced. But I would disagree that all the anthropologists or whoever would turn away once they saw that footprint come out and stuff. I still think there's a lot of people that are out there interested, and I just think it's something that
a lot of people lately showing pretty good photographs of lone footprints. And my first question was, why is there only one? I mean,
yeah, like you brought up,
jump out of the sky, take one hop, and take off again. There should be others.
No, yeah, well, let's just say that I had a 4K camera, and I'm sitting there with a 4K camera. Sasquatch walks by. I've got it on a nice tripod. I've got a very clear view of Sasquatch in it. He buggers off. Then with that 4K camera, I go up there, and you can see me go on, pour the cast of the track that he made, and we find some hair sample or other DNA there. Having all that on one, on that camera, high def, you would have a very good case that probably most anthropologists or biologists would say, yes, that's something. They may not classify it as a Sasquatch, but they say yes, provided what the DNA was to show that here we have the video evidence, we can show chain of command, we can show, or chain of custody, I should say, we have enough here. Now you'd have some that say don't. The problem is in 60 years of Sasquatch being in the public eye, or 50 years if you want to, shorten it up a bit, we don't have anything even remotely close to that.
Well, 53
We've
years.
got pretty good arguments against the existence of the Sasquatch when it comes to that.
Yeah, totally.
And by other means, like one I like to use a lot that bugged the hell of me is the overpasses in the national parks.
But I think the other thing too is like, and I've said this before too, is we'd be better off as a community just stop putting garbage out and say it's a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It saturated the web. Like, honestly, if we got another videotape the same amount of time, that's 4K of a Sasquatch, like Bob Gimlin did or whatever, and we put that out once every if we put good data out once every 6 months instead of having to have something for the audience, that would charge everybody to, holy shit, did you see that latest video from so-and-so? Oh yeah, fuck, that looks really, really solid,
Mm-hmm.
And when it is really solid, because it would be vetted by all of us skeptics that are out here that, like, you're right, release the hounds on me if I ever say this is a Sasquatch, and release the hounds on me. I expect that. But the problem is everything's so saturated with, you got 100 channels out there, and all of them are talking about Sasquatch stuff, and it's all Sasquatch stuff, but none of it's proven to be Sasquatch stuff. And so stop doing that. Take 6 months, find the good stuff, put the good stuff out there, and so that we can actually build on stuff that's solid and actually fuel our
What you're basically getting at, Leon, is the biggest enemy to the Sasquatch field is the Sasquatch field itself.
Yeah.
Well, a lot comes down to vetting and what we perceive as evidence, our perspective on evidence. That's really subjective so much that it's like, a tree break is proof to Bigfoot with some people, but for other people, it was a moose that did it last year. And so there's a real distinguishment from between the two right there, and that's something that really needs to be discussed more, is really understanding, that not everybody is going to want to come in this subject for the proof, the evidence, and all that. They just want to come here for the stories. They might even want to just tell stories because they like how it feels and get the attention and whatever, and that's where we just have to recognize that those type of people, not spend a lot of time on them, but to really go focus on what really is, because those people really aren't going to have useful information for us if we're really truly looking for information. And that there, I think, will trim the fat a lot and get rid of stuff that we don't need to really pay attention to, that we don't need to put our time towards. So, we can kind of put it towards what is Bigfoot.
I think go ahead, Bill.
I think a perfect analogy of our Sasquatch community, and I don't believe there's a community, to be honest with you, but there was a show, I think it was called something like $1 Million Bigfoot Hunt or something like that.
$10 million, yeah.
Yeah, they had teams of 2 people that were going out and searching, had different tasks to do. And I watched the first episode, and it's sort of like I didn't watch it again. But they said, go out there and find evidence. And I think there were 5 teams or whatever it was. 4 teams came back with crap evidence. Some had hair that turned out to be bear, some had fecal matter, whatever. But there was one group that went out. They came back and said, we didn't find anything that we couldn't explain or that we thought was Sasquatch related. So then they were immediately, the first team kicked off the show because they didn't come back with evidence. So what they did is they rewarded the 4 groups that brought back crap, and the one that were serious and was only going to bring back stuff they were confident could be Sasquatch, they kicked off the show right away. And that's what the community is like. If you're out here, like Thomas has been, I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say about Thomas, you've been in the field for 40 years. How come you don't have a Sasquatch picture? And Thomas's answer is, because I don't hoax. And there's people out there that define that they figure to be validated as researchers, they have to bring back the red circle pictures. And Leon's right. I mean, there's way too much crap. If we like the group that Thomas and I, we've gone out, I don't know how many times together. We've never posted anything on the internet as evidence because, frankly, there's nothing that we found out there that we thought was good enough to share as evidence. So if everybody did that, there'd be a hell of a lot less stuff to go through.
Right.
And the quality would be
Unfortunately,
much higher.
that's not going to happen.
Well,
People-
it does if you have the right circle of people that's in your group of like-minded individuals. Create your own little community that can even help you vet like this stuff out, because that's one of the big problems. Like
Right.
investigators are coming across, like Matt, for instance. He's like, I got this. How? Where do I send it? How can I help get this vetted out? There's no options for him, really. You can go post on the internet or do whatever, but it's that's something there that would probably help improve the quality of product as well, as if we have a better vetting system so we better understand it. Better streamlined system for those really serious investigators that are coming up with potential quality evidence, but it's just kind of going unnoticed or forgotten about or underground or whatever because of how it's presented or whatever.
Right.
The problem is like Bill said, I only call it the Sasquatch community for lack of a better term. A better term for it would probably be subculture.
Right.
Because there are so many people out there now who call themselves researchers and stuff. They're just out there to spin yarn and tall tales to get their 15 minutes and
LARPing.
Well, expectations for each of
Hollywood
those groups are
give us
different.
their own show, that kind of thing.
Right. But each one of those groups have different expectations. They have different opinions on how they vet their material and what is acceptable. Not all of them.
At all.
Yeah, and there's groups that don't. That the first thing they see is real, and that's that. And you shouldn't, because that's wrong. You should always believe somebody. Now, for me, okay, this is my opinion, is that you can't really call structures Bigfoot structures unless you see a Bigfoot doing the structure.
Absolutely.
And we don't have that. We don't have a video of a Sasquatch with a what did I told my husband this Louisville slugger hitting the end of a tree.
But you have Bigfoot influencers telling you that it is, so that's
you do, and people will follow them and believe them, and that is this sickness. I don't know what to
tree
call
structure.
it.
Yeah, the whole tree structure thing. Really, a lot of it stems from the Colorado Bigfoot effect that just really infected the community.
He is in an area that is wrought with big, huge structures, and maybe some of them are Bigfoot related. But the way he gives the information, it destroys any thing that could be real in my eyes. Not for everybody, because he's got a ton of followers who will praise him and follow him and give him money to keep on going.
But trailers.
It's not there's no end, to those type of groups. It's just, this is it, and this is all you're going to get, because you either believe that this stump is a Bigfoot or you don't. And I don't. And I can move on. I've gone through, I don't know how many channels, and I'll watch for a week and go, that ain't for me. Thank you. No, and move on. Because there's so much more out there. And there are some really good researchers out there. And you're right. They don't have Bigfoots on all their shows, or whenever they put up their research videos. They're research. They're out there walking, because you're not going to see a Bigfoot every dang time you're out there in the woods. I just don't think it's possible. There may be somebody out there who is genuinely in touch with a Bigfoot all the time, but I have not been convinced of that.
No.
You know, so it's just, so it just leaves a lot. We have people who now, like what you said, where do we send our photos, our videos? Who's going to believe us? Who's going to believe my story? Or who will give me that to help me move along in my research? You know, it's just really hard to find that right place you can fit into, that right group who will give you the support you need. And depending on, you know, how big you want to do your investigations, if you feel you're a full-on researcher and investigator, and you go out there with your gloves and you're picking up little pieces of hair and stuff, then if you're picking up hair and poop and stuff, then I hope you have somebody in line to look at that stuff, because after a week it's garbage. I'm sorry, after a week, whatever you've collected is garbage. It's going to be altered and it's going to change. So unless you have somebody in your little community, your little group, that can do the analysis, even if it's just hair analysis of just who knows how to look in a microscope and tell deer, bear, cow, horse, porcupine, whatever, and can tell you, hey, you ain't got a Bigfoot. I know what this is. Any of that would help, but there's very few people in the community who do that.
Well, there is hope coming down the pipeline, though.
There is.
I was just talking to Amy Boo, and she's got the Project Zoo book, and she said she's got over 40 scientists that are non-Bigfooters that can help vet out stuff in the field that we collect, but there's no real system in place. Yeah, there's no real system in place, but they're developing a website that will help a serious investigator send samples over or get in contact with the right people. Like, hey, if there's a hair sample, okay, well, we can send it to this person, and have it already set up in place. Because I know Cindy Dosen does it, but I heard recently that she's no longer doing it as actively as she used to be, and which is kind of an issue. But yeah, so hopefully coming down the pipeline, what Amy's doing with Project Zoo Book, which in my opinion has a lot of potential, because that there is really going to help streamline the evidence that we are collecting out there. Because if we can quickly vet something out that, okay, this is a loon, so we don't have to worry about dealing with this anymore, and then we can move on to something that is Bigfoot related. And
right.
So hopefully, with everybody working together, we can achieve something like that for the people who are out there seriously wanting to figure out what's going on and find out what this evidence is that they're collecting. And they're not going to be emotionally attached to it. And that's the important thing. They won't be emotionally attached to it to the point where if it's not Bigfoot, they're not going to throw a tantrum like a baby saying, you're wrong, you're whatever.
Right.
So, there's some hope coming down the pipeline, hopefully.
Right. If you're gonna share what you feel is evidence to the public online, okay, that's public, then you need to be willing to take the criticism that comes with that. Honestly, you do. But at the same time, you can, walk away from that, and those people can definitely, keep things civil at the same time.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're out there on a random Facebook Bigfoot group that are out there, oh, hey, look at this, and you start getting in conflict with people because they're assholes in there. But if you go into like a research project of like what Zoobook's doing, you're not going to get that sort of negative interactions. They'll be like, hey, this is what's going to go on. It's more professional, which I think kind of where it needs to be, but not everybody's at that level. So, it's only going to be reserved for the people who are seriously looking for it, not the people who are out there LARPing or, hoaxing or doing whatever, so.
Right. So we've discussed about how sharing evidence and who do we give the evidence to, and investigators. What about, but these are all scenarios of practically researchers, of people who have evidence that they want to share. And sometimes we deal with people who have encounters that they didn't expect it. That it's just something that happened. And I just don't feel that the expectations should be held as high for those type of encounters. They're just what they are. They're at face value type.
Yeah, like with Joe's encounter, it's like you can't expect anything other than the story that he said, because there was no real opportunity. There's not, you didn't have the opportunity to get a camera out or anything like that. It's just what's left is the story, and you can't really expect anything past that other than the story that remains. And with encounters, you can't really, like you're saying, you can't expect much past that, because you rarely get anything past that. But if it's somebody who's constantly out there investigating and out there have an active investigation going on, and for all these multiple months or years or whatever, that's when you can start, having higher expectations of what's being presented to the public. But if it's just somebody random that had an encounter, it's like, yeah, give them a free pass for everything. But those other people that I think need to be held to a higher standard.
You're going to hear a different tone too. People who are researchers, they're going to try a convincing tone with you in their auditorial expression of it. A person who's telling you an event that actually happens, they're just telling you the story. It's going to be a total different tone in the story.
Mhm.
This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Oh my God. And then I saw this turn around. You're going to see it. They're going to be experiencing it. They're going to be right back there in the event of it. People who aren't, who are researchers, they're going to try to convince you of their story. They're going to do certain somebody who looks at you with a certain way with their eyes, you can always tell that it's called a check-in with their eyes. And they're looking to see whether or not you're buying what they're putting out there on the plate for you. And whereas a person who is telling a story, they don't give a shit whether you believe them or not. They just got to tell the story. So they're going to just tell you the story. So they're not looking for any feedback, not looking for anything other than, this is what I saw, and can you kind of put some what the feedback they want back is some type of, I guess, that's what I'm looking for, some kind of guidance again.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was struggling with. Yeah, guidance. It is guidance.
Because they don't know what they saw. I mean, they're not too sure what they saw. And again, your brain's going to try to disvalidate it. If you did run into one, you're going to try to almost say, like Thomas has that report he just did last year where he shared a little while ago about, the guy wants to convince himself it's not a Sasquatch. That's what you're looking for. Every somebody's trying to convince you that it's a Sasquatch. Those are people who are storytellers. So.
And that's what happens. People who don't know what they see want to say, well, I'm not ready to tell you. I don't know what I saw. I can't grasp what I saw in my head. How can I tell you what I saw when I don't know what I saw? But I saw something.
Well, that's when somebody probably shouldn't be talking about it at all, and just not go online and make comments about everything else that happened to them except for said event, which makes can confuse people.
It can confuse people, but unfortunately, peer pressure is a real thing, and I think it affects people.
And I think one of the other things that we don't talk about enough is, you can get somebody that had what they believe was an experience, and they've taken a picture, and they show you the picture, and you see nothing there. When you go, oh, it's pareidolia, or you just don't see anything. But for them, they're looking at it, but they're not looking at it with your unbiased eyes. And Leon could get much better into the explanation. But when they're looking at it with their memories of seeing what they believe they took the picture of. And I think sometimes what we have to do when we're conveying or talking to them is, yes, you've told us the encounter, and it appears you believe it. Right. But this photo itself, to the unbiased eye, does not provide the evidence you think it does. So we do have to, sometimes what we're doing is not only and that's where I think when he's talking about giving guidance is, sometimes people are seeing stuff there and they're seeing it with part memory, and we just have to talk about, well, that's not what I see because I wasn't there. And how many times have you seen a picture where somebody goes, oh yeah, that was something, and it doesn't have to be Sasquatch related. It could be they saw their favorite type of bird or maybe their favorite car or something, and all you're seeing is a blur because you're just seeing the picture as it is, sort of in a sterile environment.
Right. And that's actually the exact scenario I had on a slide, is, that exact same thing, that you may have seen a Bigfoot or, a photo, or have a photo or video of it, and it just doesn't look like what you saw. Whoever you're showing it to isn't going to see the same thing you saw. So
absolutely. And that happens. And anything where they have to circle it and tell you what you're looking at as evidence, it's just gone out the window, even if it was a Sasquatch.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, if you got to point it out, it's not good evidence.
Yeah, it's not
definitely true.
Yeah.
I think what people need to understand, though, if you want to see that photo and they share it with you, and they do, that you have to realize that you asked for the photo. Okay. They may not have been presenting it as evidence of anything, but in general, people wanted to see video, or wanted to see the video or photograph. So that comes out, and then it's they just want to put such harsh content on it that, you wanted to see it. We told you it wasn't going to be much to see, but now here it is, and it's out there now. So
yeah, and that's when people, since it's so subjective of what we're looking at, and that's when people try to help solve the mystery by saying, oh, hey, it could be light through the trees, or hey, it could be this or that, or really try to dive in to really kind of figure out this mystery of what they potentially saw. And there is a certain point where you can only push so far and only get so far, and that's where you have to start. If you start disrespecting the other person, that's when it's like, I probably should kind of take a break from this for a minute. Yeah,
you back off and let happen whatever happens. I mean, not everybody can get to every location immediately to investigate a certain place.
I do understand that location thing, though. It's like it would be nice if it's all about transparency. So it's like if there's a location, it's like, oh well, what's the location? You should just like, well, yeah, this is a location if there's no real big deal about it. Which I don't know. It seemed kind of weird that that's something that you would withhold, because it just seems like there's something, it's like, why is there something hiding, or you're hiding something, or so it's what's being perceived by people who are trying to solve the mystery too, with how it's being presented, and again with how much everything is being talked about, and certain things you can't talk about, or it gets a little wonky at times.
But that's, in some cases, it sounds like it's a you problem because you don't have that information. They have that information, and they might not even have that information.
But then it comes like but then it's the point where it's like, well, everybody's talking about it, and it almost feels like you're dangling a carrot over somebody's face. Of like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about it only so much, make you create all these mysteries with all these questions. It's like an episode of Lost. You watch an episode of Lost, and you're left at the end of the episode like, geez, I have way more questions now. But now there's this type of we're only going to let selected information out, which just tarnishes everything, because that's it. Whenever anything talked about it, there should be a full transparency to avoid misunderstandings, which I think this is kind of what it is. Well,
yeah, it's a lot of misunderstanding, because for this scenario, they nobody even knows where they were for a case of the rim. Okay, we're talking about the Mogollon Rim in this scenario. They didn't really know where they were. So they can't give a location when they don't know where they were.
Oh, I thought they knew, but didn't want to.
No, they don't know. They don't know exactly where they were. Okay?
Well, yeah.
They were brought out in the middle of the night, and they may know kind of where they were, but they don't know. And this not real. even if they were to call OnStar, I don't think they would be given the information.
Well, they should be, because it's their
Well,
information.
no, because three different GPS coordinates were given at the same exact time. How does that happen? Three.
Easy. It's there's probably, if you
Triangulation,
Google
a
it, well, yeah,
triangulation,
triangulate
maybe?
in between a
But they're
triangulation
only
between
gonna give
satellite.
them one. So
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
it doesn't mean that doesn't mean that there's not an answer for it.
there's not, but I don't think any of the departments that were involved are going to give that information out.
Well, I don't know.
It's not. It won't happen. It won't happen for anybody, but maybe the initial person who put the call in, I guess. But
Oh yeah, for like
you know,
like OnStar, they should be able to get that. Even checking the phones out,
no,
'cause
we
even,
already did that. That's not a thing. I was gonna
yeah, it sounds
tell
like
you
all
that, Brent,
options
and I
are,
forgot.
yeah, it sounds
No,
like,
we've already checked that out, and mine does. My phone did. My phone tracked everywhere I went, but theirs didn't, and I can tell you those reasons. But it's not a big deal. It didn't work. It's not there. There is no
yeah.
GPS because they did not have them on, so it didn't track. You have to have your GPS on for that to work.
Well, your phone's always tracking you. If your phone's on, you're being tracked, even if you're
Well,
in
no,
airplane mode.
you can go in and manually turn off your GPS.
No, it'll always track you. It's you can't turn it off. You can't.
Well, you
can
turn
try.
it off. You just don't have it's turned off.
You can turn your phone off. Yeah.
It's not turned off to authorities. They can still track your phone.
Well, yeah, the authorities, but now it's not in it's not in our control.
But there's apps that still will track you. But either way, it's it is what it is, I guess. I don't know where it goes from here. Hopefully people get it resolved, and I don't know if people are going to want to talk about it. I don't know if people want to talk about it in the future, or
there's
if
nothing
just want
to
to drop it
resolve
from
in
here.
that case. It's over.
Yeah.
It's done. And they told pretty much their whole story. Everybody's heard pretty much everything.
But I don't think Lockbeard is trying to divide a community. I just think he thinks a lot different, and I think he assumed that these are people who were that were out there researching and investigating what they were looking at.
But we weren't researching and investigating.
I know that's the thing. That's the thing, is he's not really realizing is they were just out there trying to get to their destination.
They were just out there trying to get to me.
And that's why he should probably, not be as so hardcore on them, and just understand that, this is probably all you're going to really get from it. And he has the option to believe it or not, like everybody else. He does.
He does. Have that option.
And, but hopefully him, Moggs, and Stevie, Joe, and Judy can talk behind the scenes to get it resolved, so it doesn't keep going on. Because then, I could just see Lockbeard coming out with another video, then someone else coming out with a video.
He will.
It won't have to be if it gets resolved behind the scene, and that's what I'm talking about. It can easily get resolved tonight if these people, get together and get it done and resolved, so all of us don't have to deal with it.
Resolve what though? That's resolve what? What is there
so they
to
can
resolve?
talk private, so they can actually talk privately to each other and get it resolved, and not
about what,
not via podcast. Well, the understanding that, I think once they talk privately with each other, that's when they're going to really get a better understanding and have a more, they'll be at a more understanding with each other of where things are left. So if not, Lockbeard is just going to make a video, and however that's going to turn out, then that's going to piss a lot of people off.
There's nothing more to say. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
He's heard everything.
For all of us, that's true. It's like, I'm surprised.
Well, I don't know. Wait a second,
talking about it.
I don't know whether or not the other three of us here, the dynamic you guys are in right now is the problem.
Yeah.
You guys are feeding, it's like a feeding frenzy going on between you two in this conversation of trying to prove it, trying to defend it, trying to do this. That's the problem.
Well, no, it's an understanding of.
It's just like, just let them deal with it themselves. Like, at one point where we're sitting here talking about trying to, give a person a right to have their own story and all this kind of thing, and let them share it when they need to share it and all that kind of stuff. it's impossible on YouTube. YouTube's not reality. YouTube is the YouTube world, and the YouTube world demands what it demands from everybody,
Right.
which is we want the answers. I want to know the answers. You know, like I told you when we were offline, is I'd like to sit down and debrief those three about what happened and stuff like that. But I'm not going to stick my neck out there and force it upon them or whatever like that, is because it has to be a voluntary act for anybody to come out and say, because you're going to get a lot farther information that way than you are with trying to somehow start analyzing and picking it. You haven't even heard the stories yet. Now, we're notorious culturally wise for just sitting there and filling in the blanks of what we think is going on instead of letting the person have the right to do it. And yet there's a frustration in doing that, because you know perfectly well, like for me, if I'm dealing with multiple witnesses, you keep them separate. You don't let them talk about the thing together to see whether the stories are the same. So to let them spend time and talk about what they need to talk about, well, sure, you know, if they're good people, like if Thomas and Bill and Brent, and if you guys saw a Sasquatch, I would probably be more valid to trust you getting together talking about your experience than I have to separate the three of you, because you're out to find out what you're trying to find out, but not all everyone's like that. So yeah, but watching the dynamic, I'm just sitting there smiling, going, well, this is the problem with the community right here. Visually, we could just see it. It's like, well, now you guys can't tell from your tone, but the energy just charged out of both of you as you're having this conversation. It's like, yeah, that's why people are having such a hard time.
It's the talk of the town. It's the talk of the online Bigfoot scene for the last, what, 2-3 weeks now. And it's,
there was a video
bad.
There was a video on BC on it already. I think it was the day after. I thought, somebody's already done a video on this already? How do they even know the story? I don't even know the story. I just listened to somebody talk about the day before.
And yet this is the first I'm hearing of it.
Yeah, you know, like it's crazy of how it just, again, we're so desperate for something good because, or with the possibility of being something good. And that's the problem is when we talked about, I remember I mentioned the story to you before, was when I was talking about, we were talking about archaeology in one of my courses, and one of my professors says, you know, there is some fat 16-year-old kid that, you know, wore socks and shorts and just looked like a big eating a sucker, and here he's they're over in Egypt in this dig, and the kid's never done any archaeology before, and here he finds this 7,000-year-old pot that's 3 feet in diameter. He happens to run across it. That's the same way it's going to be with Sasquatch. It's like, it's going to be somebody who's not even interested in Sasquatch, but we have to hear all the stories, because somebody's got to see one. Someone's going to have the right story, and out of that right story, the truth's going to be made. So, but the problem is you have to sift through all of these stupid stories, and we're so desperate instead of being patient in regards to, again, there's just so much garbage online that you just automatically want to go to a negative thing because everything is negative. It's like, here we go again. Here we go again. Here we go again.
I know. I got to stop myself from like being constantly like, just like, no, well, here's another hoax, or here's another somebody misidentification. It's really hard to not always be that way. You know, it's you got to watch yourself.
You got to do your own thing. That's the key part, is you got to do your own thing. Show your people your own thing. The more you show your people your own thing, other people will find your channel, and that's what all you can do, really. You can't, like, I had somebody contact me the other day about some other organization online, which I won't mention their name, about how they're doing what they were doing, and it bothered them that it bothered that person that they were doing what they were doing, and it bothered them. How do I word this? It bothered them that it bothered them that they were doing that they were doing, and I'm just thinking, well, just go do your own thing. Like I gotta go do for Bigfoot Okanagan. Anyways, it's like I'm gonna just focus on my people for Bigfoot Okanagan. That's it. You don't want to. I'm not interested in any other stuff. I'm going to try to show good stuff. I'm going to try to show strategies, what to do and stuff like that. Like the book, like Jerry does with Thomas's stuff, and short little stories stuff. The stuff that people need education on. That's all you could do as a channel provider. I think getting caught in the politics or caught in your identity of being, oh, I have a YouTube channel. Yeah, well, I have 3 YouTube channels, and you guys don't even know the other two of them, you know. You have four. Oh wow. But you know, like if the Bigfoot community to me is just it's helpful, but it also tells you about the people's capacity to being honest with themselves. I mean, you can only be honest with the evidence in regards to how honest you are with yourself. And if you are delusional and you are used to playing games with yourself, you're going to play games in regards to your hunt for a Sasquatch, and it's going to come across in your narration of how you articulate what you believe you're seeing. It's not going to be at all valid in regards to what you're actually witnessing as far as evidence goes, but to you, you're going to buy into that whole thing because you're delusional. You know, who wants to be delusional? Well, we're all delusional. We all have a dose of a bit of crazy in us. So the idea is to work it out so you're not being deceptive. And you know, like, why do people lie? Why do people keep lying? Like, especially to some of like the stories I went to last year. You know, you're lying. You know, it's straight out. Well, I'm not really lying. Well, because I made a phone call to a person. It's like you're doing the catfishing. You know, if you ever watch that show Catfishing, every person who's caught always acts like, I'm not being deceptive. I just showed the wrong pictures. It's not really me, but everything else I told you was true. As if everything else I told you was ever true validates that even though you showed the wrong pictures, which is the first contact for the person to be wanting to reach out to you, you started off with a lie. So, you know, it's like these people who have channels, they start off with a lie. You don't know what's a lie. How would you know what's a lie? You trust it. You trust that Colorado Bigfoot knows what the hell he's talking about. Does he know anything about forestry? Does he know about anything reading the ground? Does he know anything about tree structures? Does he know anything about why stuff ends up being in the forest the way it ends up being in the forest? Probably not. Does he know how to read tracks? Probably not. Do most people? Probably not. But they sure have these channels where they're spouting off as if in a certainty tone. And again, a certainty tone is to convince you of something. A knowing tone is not about convincing you. It's just the way it is. You see this track right here. One of my videos, you'll see a track. This is a deer track there. I can see there's something unique about this deer track. A, it's a female. B, it's pregnant. How do you know? This is how you know. Look at it. It's certainty. There's a certainty there. And that when you're dealing with somebody who's witnessing something of the unknown, there's a certainty there. There's a certainty of unknownness that's so petrifying to them. It activates that primal part of the brain that you can't help that there's something there. You sniff it. Thomas is probably pretty familiar with that. Sniffing, you can sniff it on them. You can just tell. Also the deceptive part of it. There's a deceptive part of it that you can sniff on people too. And the more honest you are with yourself, the quicker you're going to have a superpower being able to do that in regards to witnesses. You got to get your name out there. You got to get your organization out there so people can contact you. It's nice when they contact us instead of the crazy people. There's a lot of craziness out there. So
yeah,
there's my lecture. There's my 2 cents.
No, that was really good. You probably need to cut that part and like have a standalone video for that. That was really good. No, that really encompassed a lot. That was good.
That's good.
Right.
I think I'm having a seizure. That's probably why.
Yes. I know we got to watch our time. He says he's only good for about an hour and a half, and then he starts.
3 minutes. 2 minutes.
You're good so far, man.
I don't want to see anything unusual.
We go on the floor. There we go.
Oh, here we go again.
Crisis.
For sure. But hey, chat, I haven't been ignoring you. It's just been a very in-depth conversation. So if you have any questions, please put those in caps so I can find them, and we will try to get answers from the panel. We aren't going to be going too long tonight. My kids have already been interrupting me. When are we going to get food? Are you going to make anything?
Is Steve Cull still doing shows or what?
Not lately. No.
Yeah, because I keep waiting for I want to see him on his show.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not lately. He has not. He's been very busy.
Well, he was. I remember he was talking about moving. That he was trying to get property. So I think he's probably doing a lot with moving and work and.
He would have had
so
to.
I think he'll be back.
And everything. So yeah, I'm sure he just needs go at getting a new studio up and everything. So.
Yeah. I see Moggs is here.
Sure. Yeah. Moggs is here.
Joe, I'm sorry about COVID, buddy. Glad you're doing better.
Yeah, that sucked, dude.
It's
COVID.
horrible. So
It is
I
horrible.
was
just
seeing
rest,
like, man, I feel
rest,
so
rest,
bad.
rest. Let me look. I'm looking at what did that say? When Leon runs down, he will start to talk more.
Yeah, you got to quicken up because I can't shut up. I guess. You better listen up because I can't shut up.
Let's see. What else we got? I'm gonna have to listen to your what? I'm gonna have to listen to your account. Oh, for Jay Fritz. Yes.
I think that's a Moggs, isn't it? 2 shows ago.
I think he did it in 2 different places, right?
For what?
But definitely on Mogi on Monster, I think he gave his biggest account. Oh, on Jay's. I think he went on Jay's too. Didn't he go on yours? Joe? I mean, Joe on Western New York Bigfoot.
No, I think Joe's been out of action for.
That'd be nice to
It
get.
was for a while. It was a while back.
That'd be nice to get that whoever channel he did that on, for them to cut that segment and make like an independent video, so people can be like, if are interested in Jay's encounter, they can be like, oh, here's a video of Jay's encounter and stuff. Help them out.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, do you have any final thoughts, Mr. Thomas?
Oh, not only despite what we've discussed tonight, I don't think much will change. It'll still go on and on the way it always has. And
could be.
People will either report something they saw, or we'll deal with a lot of people who are looking for their 15 minutes. And until that hard physical evidence is ever brought in, nothing will ever change in the Sasquatch field. And we just carry on. I mean, I'm 61, man. If you'd asked me back in 1978, we'd be still looking in 2022, I would have said, no way. But here we are.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill, how about you? Any final words?
Yeah, I think one thing that, especially when it comes to YouTube, and maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite here, but part of why we do this is not only because of our desire to know, but also just because for enjoyment. So, I mean, I'll tell you right now, there's a couple of Sasquatch channels I listen to where personally I don't believe a thing they say. I think they're a teller of tall tales, but I enjoy listening to their tales, and I enjoy listening how they put it about. The same thing as there's a couple of Dogman channels that I listen to because I enjoy the tales. It's the scary stories. And I think people can do both. You can listen to some YouTube channels for pure enjoyment just because you like the stories. And then you can listen to others with a more critical mind that you think are real researchers. If you and the real researchers should also try to not only educate people, but also make it enjoyable. Part of when we're on the Buckwalk crew on Jerry's site, we try to keep it truthful, or we do keep it truthful, at least to our knowledge. And we also, we try to entertain. And I think you got to do that. But also, if there are channels that you don't believe it, but you just think is good fun to listen to, that's a good enough reason to listen to them.
Right. Yeah.
It's good fun to listen to. That's.
Oops. I don't know what that was.
That was me.
Oh.
Sorry.
Bill's voice the other day.
That was me. That was me. Sorry.
Leon, how about you? Any final thoughts?
No, I just think that what other than let's start, and again I'll offer you $100 American, which is a good $67 Canadian. Woo! You give me 2 videos, one of the animal that does the whooping and the coyote making the other bizarre sounds that you hear, and I'll take care of the rest of the other audio stuff. So you could be put down in Bigfoot history if you're the ones who find out get those two on film. I mean, and think of it, it's just a bird like a loon. I mean, I did the coyote loon challenge. I'm still waiting for somebody to film a loon crawling and I'll offer you $50 Canadian for that one too, which is like $38, But you think there'd be something simple. There's enough coyotes and loons around, at least in Canada here, that it'd be easy to film them making their calls. No, you can't even do that. You're going to film a Sasquatch? Don't think so. Practice, practice, practice. Like Thomas says, have your recorder on all the time, because when your pants are down, it's probably more likely when they're going to walk in front of you. You're in the forest with your pants down doing your business, and they're going to go, what are you doing? And you're going to go, I'm looking for my camera, and Thomas is going to kill me because I didn't bother filming you. You stupid hairy bugger. Anyways, no, that's it. Just let's start over and find out what is actual evidence, and then build on that instead of a lot of this speculative stuff. So.
That's good. That's awesome. Brent, how about you, buddy?
I still want to encourage people to come forward, even though, there was this last event that caused a lot of chaos, but hopefully it's something that we can learn from, learn how to better communicate with each other, and, better manage expectations and, whatever in people and all that stuff. And that hopefully all those people will bring a resolve, because, they're all good people. It's just, we are looking at it from different ways, and we're not realizing that. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding, and which is really unfortunate, because, everybody in chat is a really good people. Everybody really is. So I'm hoping that we can get it all resolved, that all those people talk privately and get it resolved. It's not like there's new information, but just so that they can talk to each other privately, because I think that's really important on bringing a resolve for everybody. So everybody's not being affected by the negativity that's coming out from this. And again, it's a learning experience for us all that we could take a hold of and follow through with. So that's about it.
Right.
And
And
one little quick thing. It is possible for all the birds to be flying the wrong direction.
if birds are real, which they're not. So
well, that's right. But if they were, when they were real, it's possible for them to fly the wrong direction. All of them. So there's something.
oh man, well, hey, I really appreciate you gentlemen coming on and talking
Bill?
about this topic. And what?
Bill?
Oh yes, Bill.
Bill, you're there you go.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I was actually reading the comments there. So.
You have any final words, Bill?
No final words. The only thing I see in the comments here, a bunch of people are saying, why would you come forward after what happened with the event that you guys are talking about that Thomas and I seem to know nothing about? And
Yes.
what I would say to those people is, Thomas has a few hundred interviews himself that he's done. We've all done interviews, and we've treated those people with respect. So, there are researchers out there that do treat you with respect, and you shouldn't be scared to bring it forward.
Agree. Very much so. Thank you guys for coming on and talking about this subject. Hopefully next week we can you guys will still be available if Keenan can come on, and we can resume.
Do you want me to send a
the
message?
original show.
I like this mystery man, this person that I've never heard of.
Keenan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
never heard of.
Ooh.
Keenan, last time I was with Keenan, it was for Alberta Camp Out, or Alberta Sasquatch Camp Out, and he found a place for me, and he put me right next to a structure. Deliberately. So when I woke up in the morning, I wake up and there's a structure. The big,
Oh my goodness.
6 feet or 7 feet tall, right in front of my tent. It was pretty funny, but it was a good time. Had a good time with the guys. So
That's cool.
yeah.
So I'll be letting you all know if that happens or not. I don't know. He hasn't gotten back to me, so we will see what happens. But everybody in the chat, thank you for coming and joining in the conversation. And that's what this is. It's just a conversation between us and declaring our opinions and anything can happen. There's it is what it is, and And I do appreciate all of you and your support. And hopefully you'll hit that like and share my stories and come around again soon. So with that, thank you all and have a good night.